The child reached the Duke before anyone could stop her. She slipped beneath Lady Belwether's lifted fan, passed between two silk skirts, and crossed the polished drawing-room with the terrible purpose of someone too young to understand fear and too honest to respect it. The music faltered first. Then the conversation. By the time Lady Matilda Vale stood before Benedict Grantham, Duke of Wycliffe, every candlelit face in the Mayfair music hall had turned to watch the small girl in the pale blue frock as if she had stepped onto a stage. "Please marry my sister," she said. The words were clear. Too clear. A laugh broke somewhere near the pianoforte, delicate and sharp, the sort of laugh society used when something uncomfortable had happened and everyone wished to pretend it had not. Lady Cressida Vale felt the sound move through the room like cold air beneath a door. She had been standing near the long windows, where she had been placed because the shadows were kinder there and because Lady Selina had instructed her not to draw attention. Cressida had obeyed. She had perfected obedience so thoroughly that most rooms forgot she occupied them. At 28, with no fortune large enough to tempt affection and no beauty loud enough to command admiration, she had become a quiet fixture at the edge of other people's evenings. Useful. Presentable. Unremarkable. That was what her stepmother required of her. That was what kept Tilly safe. Until now. "Matilda," Lady Selina said, her voice soft enough to be mistaken for patience by anyone who did not know her. "Come here at once." Tilly did not move. Her brown curls had come loose from their ribbon, and her small hands were clasped before her as if she were praying. She looked very small before the Duke of Wycliffe, who stood beside the marble mantel in a black evening coat, his expression carved into the controlled stillness for which he was famous. He was not the sort of man little girls approached. He was not the sort anyone approached without calculation. Mothers angled daughters toward him. Fathers lowered their voices near him. Men with debts avoided his gaze. Benedict Grantham had inherited one of the oldest dukedoms in England and the habit of making a room remember it. Yet Tilly looked up at him with desperate faith. "Please," she added. "You're a duke." Another ripple of amusement travelled through the guests. Lady Belwether lifted one jewelled hand to her mouth, half scandalized and half delighted. "How charming," she murmured, though nothing in her eyes was kind. "Children do say the most extraordinary things." Cressida stepped forward at last, but Lady Selina's fingers closed around her arm before she had moved 2 paces. Not hard enough for anyone to notice. Hard enough for Cressida to understand. "You will not make a scene," Selina whispered without turning her head. Cressida kept her face composed. She had learned long ago that pain became more useful to others when it was visible. So she did what she had always done. She held herself still. Across the room, Tilly shook her head. "I'm not being naughty," she said. "I asked because Cressida will not ask for herself." The room stilled further. Not silent yet. Society rarely granted silence all at once. It surrendered it inch by inch, as curiosity overcame manners. Benedict did not smile. He lowered himself slightly, not quite kneeling, but bending enough that Tilly no longer had to crane her neck. The gesture changed the room. Dukes did not bend for children in public unless they meant the public to notice. "And why," he asked gently, "do you believe your sister requires a husband from me in particular?" Tilly glanced over her shoulder. Not at Cressida first. At Lady Selina. The glance lasted less than a heartbeat, but Cressida felt it like a candle guttering in the dark. "Because no one would dare scold her if she belonged to you." Cressida's breath caught. Lady Selina's fingers tightened. Viscount Rookham, who had been standing beside the tea table with a glass of lemonade he had not touched, gave a low chuckle. "A child's fancy, Your Grace. Lady Matilda is overfond of fairy tales." Benedict's eyes did not leave Tilly. "Is she?" Rookham's smile remained courteous. Everything about him was courteous. His silver hair, his fine waistcoat, his slow voice, the signet ring he turned absently on one finger. He looked like a gentleman painted for a family gallery, all breeding and moderation. Cressida knew the pressure of that ring better than the room knew his name. Tilly's face flushed, but she did not retreat. "It's not a fairy tale." Lady Selina released Cressida and moved forward with the grace that had carried her through 15 years of widowhood and social survival. Her gown was dove grey, her pearls subdued, her smile almost maternal. "Your Grace, I must apologize. My younger stepdaughter has been indulged by nurses and governesses until she believes every impulse deserves an audience." She extended a hand. "Matilda!" "Now!" Tilly's lower lip trembled. Cressida could not bear it. She crossed the space before another order could fall. Every eye followed her. She felt the weight of their interest, worse than mockery, because it expected her to be grateful for being seen. "Forgive us, Your Grace," she said, stopping beside Tilly and lowering her gaze in the proper measure. "My sister is tired." She meant no disrespect. "I meant it," Tilly whispered. Cressida placed one gloved hand on the child's shoulder. "Hush, darling." "No." Tilly turned, and her voice broke. "If you hush me, he won't know." A murmur moved through the room. Lady Selina's face did not change, but Cressida felt danger gather like a storm behind glass. Benedict rose to his full height. For the first time, his attention settled completely on Cressida. Not on Selina. Not on Rookham. On her. Cressida had been inspected by society many times, but rarely seen. Men looked at her dress to judge its age, her hair to judge her care, her posture to judge her breeding, her silence to judge her usefulness. The Duke looked at her as if silence itself were evidence. "What should I know, Lady Matilda?" he asked. Tilly reached for Cressida's left hand. Cressida tried to draw it back, but the movement was too swift and too frightened. Benedict saw it. His gaze dropped. There, across the inner wrist of Cressida's ivory kid glove, lay a faint violet mark, no larger than the width of 2 fingers, blurred into the leather like a bruise trying to hide beneath moonlight. It should not have been visible. She had chosen that glove because the other had torn. She had dusted it with powder in the carriage. She had held her reticule over it all evening. Yet Tilly's small fingers had pulled her hand into the light. The room seemed to contract around that stain. "Then no one can hurt her hand again," Tilly said. This time, no one laughed. Cressida gently freed her hand and lowered it into the folds of her skirt, but the concealment came too late. Benedict's expression had changed by no more than a breath, but Cressida saw it. The cold composure remained. Beneath it, something had awakened. Not pity. Pity was soft and often useless. This was attention sharpened into purpose. Lady Selina's voice floated in at once. "A little ink, I imagine. Cressida is forever misplacing things in the schoolroom. Such drama over a glove." "Indeed," Benedict said. The word was mild. It carried through the room with the weight of a door closing. Viscount Rookham set down his glass. "Ladies' gloves are fragile things. They pick up all manner of stains." Benedict turned his head slightly. "Do they?" Rookham's smile thinned. "So I am told." For one wild moment, Cressida wished she could speak. Not explain. Not accuse. Simply say that she was tired. Tired of soft voices that hid threats. Tired of rooms where no one noticed a child's fear unless it became entertainment. Tired of keeping her hands folded so neatly that no one asked why they shook. But Tilly stood pressed against her side, and Cressida knew the price of truth when it was spoken before power had decided whether to protect it. So she lowered her chin and said the only safe thing. "My sister has made an unfortunate mistake. I beg your pardon, Your Grace." Benedict studied her for a moment. The room waited for him to dismiss them. It would have been the easy answer. A polite smile, a remark about children, a return to music, and by supper the story would already have become amusing. Instead, he addressed Tilly. "Lady Matilda, I do not believe apologies are required for concern." Tilly blinked. "They're not. Not when the concern is sincere." Lady Selina gave a small, controlled laugh. "How generous of Your Grace." Benedict did not look at her. "Lady Cressida, you appear pale. Would you care for air?" There it was. Not rescue. Not yet. A door opened within the rules. Every person in the room knew a lady might step onto a terrace for air if a duke noticed her distress. No one could call it flight. No one could call it defiance. Cressida felt the offer settle around her like a cloak she had not known she needed. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady only because she made it so. "That is kind." Lady Selina moved as if to accompany her, but Benedict spoke first. "Lady Bellwether, perhaps your companion might attend Lady Cressida and her sister." The child seemed shaken. Lady Bellwether, delighted to be made useful by a duke, summoned her widowed cousin at once. Selina could not object without appearing unreasonable. That was the first time Cressida understood Benedict Grantham's power. It was not merely rank. It was precision. As Cressida guided Tilly toward the terrace doors, she felt his gaze follow them. She did not look back until she reached the threshold. When she did, Benedict stood exactly where she had left him, surrounded by candles and whispers, holding the entire room in a silence no musician dared break. His eyes lowered once more to the hand she had hidden in her skirt. Then they lifted to her face. It was not a promise. Not yet. But it was not forgetfulness either. Outside, the night air touched Cressida's cheeks, cool and damp with London fog. Tilly clung to her. "Are you angry?" the child whispered. "No, darling." "She'll be angry." Cressida closed her eyes briefly. "Yes." Behind them, the music resumed too brightly, as if the room were eager to prove nothing had happened. But something had happened. A child had spoken. A duke had seen. And Cressida's carefully folded life had begun, at last, to come apart. 15 minutes later, before his carriage left Lady Bellwether's door, Benedict Grantham placed his card upon the silver tray and spoke to the footman in a voice calm enough to chill the air around it. "Inform Lady Selina Vale that I shall call tomorrow morning." By 10 o'clock the next morning, Vale House had been polished into a lie. The brass knocker shone. The marble steps had been scrubbed until they looked innocent. In the front drawing-room, fresh flowers stood in porcelain vases, the fire burned with disciplined cheer, and Lady Selina Vale sat beneath a portrait of her late husband as if grief, economy, and maternal concern had arranged themselves around her by natural right. Cressida stood near the tea-table with her left hand tucked beneath the fold of a pale shawl. She had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the Duke of Wycliffe looking at her glove as if the faint violet mark had spoken in a language only he understood. Tilly had been dressed in white muslin and placed on a low chair beside the hearth, where she had been told to embroider a border of little blue flowers and not raise her eyes unless spoken to. The child had not made one stitch. Lady Selina noticed, of course. Lady Selina noticed everything that could be turned into discipline. "Matilda," she said, without lifting her gaze from the silver cream jug. "Your needle is idle." Tilly's small fingers tightened around the hoop. "Yes, Mamma." Selina's smile did not change. "Then correct it." Cressida looked down at the spoon in her hand. If she looked at Tilly too long, she would reveal too much. If she stepped between them too soon, the punishment would arrive later, when witnesses had gone and doors had closed. That was the arithmetic of the house. It had rules. Cruelty did not always raise its voice. Sometimes it wore pearls and asked for more tea. The butler entered before Selina could speak again. His Grace, the Duke of Wycliffe. The room altered so completely that even the fire seemed to lower itself. Benedict Grantham entered without haste, dressed in dark mourning clothes, gloved, precise, and colder than the Marchlight at the window. He bowed first to Lady Selina, then to Cressida with a degree of respect that made Selina's fingers still on the arm of her chair. Last, he inclined his head to Tilly. The child's face changed with painful hope. "Your Grace," Selina said, rising with practiced surprise. "How punctual." "We are honored." "I hope I have not called at an inconvenient hour." "Not at all." "Lady Bellwether sent word that you had left your card, but I confess I assumed you had been excessively kind to a childish disturbance." Benedict removed his glove slowly. "I rarely leave cards by accident." A small silence followed. Cressida felt it settle over the carpet, over the tea service, over Tilly's motionless needle. Selina laughed softly and gestured to the chair opposite her. "Then we must be grateful for intention." "Tea?" "Thank you." He sat, but not with the ease of a guest prepared to be entertained. He sat as a man who had chosen his ground. Cressida poured because it gave her hand something respectable to do. She kept her left wrist hidden, lifting the pot with her right and setting each cup upon its saucer with care. Benedict accepted his cup from her hand. His eyes did not drop to the shawl. That restraint was worse than curiosity. It told her he remembered. It told her he had chosen not to expose her. "Lady Cressida," he said, "I trust the night air restored you yesterday evening." Selina answered before Cressida could. "My stepdaughter is of a delicate temperament. She has always been inclined to take small embarrassments to heart." "I asked Lady Cressida." The words were not sharp. They did not need to be. Cressida felt Selina's attention cut toward her. She lifted her chin. "I was quite restored, Your Grace. Thank you for your consideration." "And Lady Matilda?" Benedict turned to the child. "Did the evening distress you?" Tilly looked at Cressida first. That single glance contained more fear than any confession. "I was sorry I spoke too loudly," she said. "Loudness is not always the same as wrongdoing." Tilly's needle slipped from her fingers into her lap. Selina set down her cup. "Your Grace is kind to excuse her." Children repeat what they only half understand. Matilda has a lively imagination, encouraged by too many sentimental books and too much indulgence from her sister. Cressida felt the familiar weight of that sentence. It was shaped like blame, but polished like concern. Benedict leaned back slightly. "Then perhaps I may ask what she misunderstood." "A family matter of no consequence." A child asking a stranger for marriage on behalf of her sister is unusual enough to suggest consequence. Selina's eyes cooled by a fraction. "You must forgive me if I speak plainly. Lady Cressida has lately been anxious. There are discussions concerning her future, and she has allowed them to unsettle her. Matilda, being devoted to her sister, has exaggerated the situation." "Discussions," Benedict repeated. "Of marriage?" "Naturally. Lady Cressida is 28. We must be practical." Cressida did not move. She had heard her age used like a closing door for years. In Selina's mouth, it always sounded like a debt coming due. "Practicality often hides a great deal," Benedict said. "To whom is she being directed?" Selina's smile sharpened. "Directed is a severe word." The drawing-room door opened again before Benedict could answer. Viscount Rookham entered as though the house belonged to him in all but deed. His morning coat was immaculate, his silver hair brushed back from a handsome brow, and his signet ring flashed as he adjusted one cuff. Cressida felt Tilly shrink beside the hearth. Benedict saw that, too. Cressida knew he saw it because nothing in his face changed. "Wycliffe," Rookham said, bowing with cordial surprise. "I had not expected the pleasure." "No?" "Lady Selina mentioned you might call. I assumed yesterday's little episode had amused you." "It interested me." Rookham's smile held. "Children do make spectacles of affection." Poor Lady Cressida must have been mortified. Cressida forced herself to meet his eyes. "I was concerned for my sister. Always so dutiful." His voice lowered into warmth that would have sounded generous to anyone who did not know the private edge beneath it. "That is what we value in you, is it not?" Benedict set his cup down. The faint sound of porcelain touching porcelain made Tilly flinch. Selina's gaze flicked to the child. "Matilda," she said, "perhaps you should go upstairs." Tilly rose at once, too quickly. "May Cressida come?" "Lady Cressida is occupied. But the blue room is upstairs." The words escaped before fear could catch them. Cressida moved without thinking. "Tilly." The child pressed both hands to her mouth. The room became quiet in a new way. Selina stood. "Matilda Vale, you will apologize." Benedict rose as well. It was a simple movement, but it changed the balance of the room. "For what?" Selina turned to him. "For interrupting her elders with nonsense." "I should like to hear the nonsense before judging it." Rookham laughed under his breath. "Your Grace, surely you do not mean to interrogate a child over household phrases." "I mean to ask why the words frightened her." Cressida's heart began to beat hard and slow. She could feel the shawl over her wrist, warm and suffocating. Tilly looked at Benedict with tears gathering but not falling. I'm not supposed to say it, she whispered. Then do not, Cressida said, more sharply than she intended. The child's eyes filled. Cressida stepped toward her at once, guilt breaking through caution. Forgive me, darling. I only mean that you must not make trouble for yourself. It's not trouble if it's true, Tilly said. Benedict's gaze moved from Tilly to Cressida. There was no triumph in it, no impatience. Only attention. Lady Cressida, he said quietly, is your sister in danger for speaking? Selina answered with a laugh that arrived too quickly. This is absurd. Cressida wanted to say no. She wanted to protect Tilly with the familiar denial, to make the morning smooth again, to survive until the Duke left and then calculate the cost. But Benedict had asked her. Not Selina. Not Rookham. Her. In that small distinction, something inside her faltered. My sister is young, she said. She does not always understand how words are received. That was not my question. Rookham moved closer to the mantel. Tilly stepped back until her skirt touched the hearth rug. Benedict noticed. Again. Lady Selina, he said, my aunt, the Duchess Agatha Grantham, is forming a committee for a charitable subscription on behalf of orphaned girls and distressed governesses. She requires assistance from ladies of good sense. I came to ask whether Lady Cressida and Lady Matilda might join her at Wycliffe House tomorrow afternoon. Selina's expression froze so briefly that only Cressida, who knew the exact temperature of her displeasure, would have caught it. How thoughtful. But Cressida's schedule is full. With marriage discussions. Benedict asked. With family obligations. Then I shall put the request in writing under my aunt's hand. It would be unfortunate for Lady Cressida to refuse a duchess without cause. Rookham's voice hardened beneath its Polish. You take a remarkable interest in Lady Cressida's engagements. Yes. The single word landed cleanly. No explanation followed. Cressida felt the floor become uncertain beneath her. Selina recovered first. We would not dream of offending the Duchess. Cressida may attend, of course, if she feels equal to it. I feel equal to it, Cressida said. Her own voice surprised her. It was not loud. It was enough. Benedict looked at her then, and for the first time since he had entered, something in his eyes warmed by the smallest measure. Approval, perhaps. Or respect. It was gone before she could name it. Selina moved toward Tilly and rested one hand lightly on the child's shoulder. And Matilda? Benedict asked. Selina's fingers paused. If the Duchess specifically desires a child's presence. She does. Then Matilda may attend. Tilly drew a trembling breath. Cressida did not dare touch her. Not yet. Benedict bowed. You have my thanks. He turned to Cressida. Until tomorrow, Lady Cressida. She curtsied. Your Grace. His gaze rested briefly on the shawl covering her wrist, then returned to her face. He did not ask. He did not expose. That mercy nearly undid her. When he left, the room did not breathe again until the front door closed below. Selina removed her hand from Tilly's shoulder. Go upstairs, she said. Tilly fled. Cressida remained where she was, because running would give Selina too much satisfaction. Rookham lifted his hat from the side table and smiled as if the morning had amused him after all. A Duchess's committee, he said. How grand you have become, Lady Cressida. Selina waited until the door closed behind him. Then she turned. You will attend tomorrow, she said softly. You will smile. You will say nothing foolish. And you will remember that invitations from dukes are not shelters. They are mirrors. They show the world every flaw a woman thought she had hidden. Cressida folded her right hand over the shawl at her left wrist. Beneath the fabric, the mark throbbed faintly. Outside, wheels moved over the stones as the Duke's carriage drew away. For the first time, the sound did not feel like departure. It felt like a line drawn through the morning. Somewhere below stairs, a maid hurried past the drawing-room door with a basket of linen. A strip of ivory kid leather, torn at the wrist, slipped from beneath the folded cloth and vanished again. Cressida saw it. So did the footman waiting in the hall. His eyes widened, then dropped. By nightfall, she feared that glove would either be destroyed or discovered. She did not yet know which possibility frightened her more. The torn glove reached Wycliffe House before noon, wrapped in brown paper and carried through the servants' entrance as if it were no more than a misdelivered scrap of laundry. Benedict Grantham did not receive it in the library, where any visitor might be announced and any footman might hesitate at the door. He received it in the small bookroom behind his study, a narrow chamber lined with estate maps, old ledgers, and the sort of silence that discouraged curiosity. His valet, Mr. Hargreaves, placed the parcel on the table without comment. Hargreaves had served 3 dukes, survived 2 scandals, and understood that a gentleman's household often discovered the truth before a gentleman's friends did. "From Vale House, Your Grace," he said. "Not stolen." Benedict looked up. "Explain the distinction." The laundry-maid was frightened enough to be honest. "She said the glove fell from the basket after your call. A footman saw it. By evening, she feared it would be burned, so she passed it to my cousin, who works in Lord Bellwether's stable. It came through safe hands." Benedict rested one finger on the paper but did not open it at once. He disliked haste when anger was near. Haste made men clumsy, and clumsy men gave villains warning. Did the maid understand why it mattered? Only that a child cried when she saw it taken away. Benedict's hand stilled. In the drawing-room yesterday, Lady Matilda had stood before him with the dreadful courage of a child who had reached the end of silence. This morning, Lady Cressida had hidden her wrist beneath a shawl and lied with the exhausted dignity of someone who had learned that truth could endanger another person. Benedict had seen fear before. In Parliament, in creditors' rooms, in hunting fields after a fall. This was different. This was fear trained into courtesy. He unfolded the paper. The ivory kid glove lay inside, torn near the wrist where fine stitching had given way. The leather had been cleaned, or someone had tried to clean it. Powder clung faintly to the stain, but the mark remained. A bruised violet curve crossed the inner wrist, uneven at the edges, darker at one oval point as if pressure had been focused there. Benedict did not touch it at first. He bent closer. Hargreaves waited. "A spill?" the valet asked. No, Benedict lifted the glove by the fingertips. It was small, carefully mended along one seam, and worn thin where a lady's hand had bent too often around duty. The mark at the wrist was not ink. It had the shape of contact. More precisely, it had the shape of a ring pressed through fine leather long enough to leave a memory. Benedict pictured Viscount Rookham in Lady Selina's drawing-room, turning his signet absently while a child shrank near the hearth. "Find out which jeweller made Lord Rookham's signet," Benedict said. Hargreaves did not blink. "Yes, Your Grace." Quietly. "Always." Benedict placed the glove back on the paper and folded the edges over it with more care than the object should have required. It was not proof enough for the world. Not yet. Society had an endless appetite for a woman's humiliation and a very delicate stomach for her evidence. A stain on a glove would be dismissed as melodrama unless it was tied to rank, motive, and witness. He needed time. Lady Cressida might not have time. "Has Duchess Agatha's note gone to Vale House?" he asked. "Within the hour, Your Grace." Written in her Grace's own hand. Benedict looked toward the window, where London's pale afternoon pressed against the glass. "Then we shall see whether Lady Selina prefers obedience to embarrassment." At Vale House, Cressida discovered the loss just after luncheon. She had gone upstairs under the pretense of choosing ribbon for Tilly's bonnet, though in truth she needed 1 minute alone where no one watched her breathe. The small drawer of her dressing table stuck as usual, swollen by damp, and she pulled it open with her right hand. Her left remained close to her body. The glove was not there. For a moment, the room seemed to lose its shape. She searched the drawer once, then again, though there was almost nothing in it. 2 handkerchiefs. A cracked scent bottle. A folded ribbon. A pair of mended cuffs. No glove. Cressida stood very still. Panic had to be managed like a candle in a draught. If it flared, someone would see. If someone saw, Tilly would pay. She crossed to the wardrobe, opened the hat box, lifted tissue, checked beneath her evening shawl, and found nothing. She had meant to destroy the glove herself. Not because it did not matter, but because it did. A mark could become a weapon in the wrong hands. Lady Selina could hold it up and laugh. Rookham could call it clumsiness. Worse, they could ask Tilly why she had spoken of it, and a child's courage was a fragile thing when adults gathered around it. A sound came from the corridor. Cressida shut the drawer and turned just as Tilly slipped inside, pale and breathless. "Cressida," she whispered. "Mrs. Vale says I'm not to go tomorrow." Cressida crossed the room at once and knelt before her. "What did she say exactly?" That little girls who invent stories must learn the cost of being noticed. Tilly's fingers twisted in her skirt. "She said Ardenwick Hall has fresh air and strict people, and I might be sent there before the week is done." Cressida felt the words enter her like cold water. Ardenwick Hall was not a prison. That was what made the threat so difficult to explain. It was a family estate in the country, with portraits, lawns, servants, and respectable silence. It was also far from London, far from witnesses, far from any person Tilly might run to if fear outgrew obedience. "Listen to me," Cressida said softly. "You are not going anywhere today." "But what if she makes me?" "Then I shall go with you." "She won't let you." The child said it without drama, which made it worse. Cressida held Tilly's hands. "Darling, did you see anyone take my glove?" Tilly's eyes widened. "The torn one?" "Yes. A maid had it in the basket. Then the footman saw. I thought he would tell." "Did he?" "I don't know." Tilly swallowed. "Is it bad?" Cressida managed a smile. "It is only a glove." "That's not true." "No." It was not. Before Cressida could answer, the schoolroom maid appeared at the door with a curtsy and a face full of warning. "Lady Selina asks for you both in the drawing-room, my lady." Cressida rose, smoothing her skirt with hands that did not feel like her own. "Come, Tilly." "I'm sorry," Tilly whispered. "Don't be sorry for telling the truth." Cressida regretted the words the instant they left her, not because they were wrong, but because truth in Vale House had walls thin enough to betray them. Lady Selina was waiting below with a letter in her hand. Her face was serene. That meant she was furious. Viscount Rookham stood by the window, the grey afternoon behind him, his signet turned inward against his palm as if he had remembered at last to hide it. "How fortunate," Selina said. "An invitation has arrived." Cressida saw the seal before she saw the writing. "Wycliffe." Her pulse struck once, hard. Selina unfolded the paper, though she had clearly read it already. "Her Grace, the Duchess Agatha Grantham, requests the company of Lady Cressida Vale and Lady Matilda Vale tomorrow afternoon at Wycliffe House, concerning a charitable subscription for distressed governesses and orphaned girls." She looked up. "Very grand." Tilly drew closer to Cressida. Rookham smiled. "A duchess's handwriting changes matters." Refusal would look deliberate. "Yes," Selina said. "That is what makes the invitation impertinent." Cressida kept her voice even. "I understood that you had agreed we might attend." "I agreed before your sister continued to prove herself unreliable." Tilly's face fell. Cressida stepped forward. "Lady Matilda did nothing today. She exists as a reminder of yesterday." Selina lowered the letter. "You will attend, Cressida. You will be gracious. You will allow the Duchess to satisfy whatever charitable curiosity has seized her? But Matilda will remain at home. Her Grace requested us both." Cressida heard the quiet defiance in her own voice and felt the room sharpen around it. Rookham turned from the window. Selina's eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake an invitation for power." "I do not." "Then do not speak as though you possess any." Silence followed. Cressida felt Tilly trembling beside her. She thought of the missing glove, the Duke's card, his measured voice asking whether Tilly was in danger for speaking. She thought of the way he had not exposed her wrist. A dangerous thing moved inside her. Not hope. Not yet. Something smaller and harder. The refusal to step backward. "If Lady Matilda is not permitted to attend," Cressida said, "I must write to her Grace and explain that I am unable to accept without my sister." Rookham laughed softly. "Careful, Lady Cressida. Stubbornness is less charming in a woman past her first season. Cressida looked at him. Then I am fortunate not to depend upon your charm. Tilly went utterly still. So did Selina. The words were mild enough to survive the room, but everyone understood them. Rookham's smile thinned. Selina folded the Duchess's letter with careful fingers. Matilda may attend, she said at last. Since you are determined to parade your sister's nerves before half of London. Cressida curtsied. Thank you. Do not thank me. Gratitude implies choice. Rookham moved toward the door, pausing near Cressida just long enough for his voice to drop. A duke's seal on a letter is not a shield forever. She did not answer. After he had gone, Tilly released a breath that sounded almost like a sob. Selina watched them both. You are becoming dangerously ambitious, Cressida. Cressida held her sister's hand and said nothing, because silence had carried her this far. Yet upstairs, somewhere beyond her reach, a missing glove had begun to speak for her. And at Wycliffe House, beneath Benedict Grantham's steady gaze, the faint violet mark on torn ivory leather was already becoming a question no polite lie could easily answer. The invitation from Duchess Agatha did not make Vale House safer. It made every silence sharper. By the next evening, Lady Selina had arranged a dinner so polished that even suspicion would have looked vulgar beside the silver. 6 candles burned in the dining room, reflected in the long mahogany table and in the gilt-framed mirrors that made the company appear twice as respectable as it was. Cressida sat on Lady Selina's right because that position allowed her stepmother to speak softly without leaning. Tilly had been permitted to dine only because Viscount Rookham had suggested, with smiling cruelty, that children learned obedience best by watching adults decide their futures. The child sat far down the table beside a widowed cousin who smelled of lavender water and never heard anything important. Cressida wore the repaired ivory gloves because refusing them would have invited questions. Beneath the left one, her wrist ached faintly where the old mark had not yet faded. She kept her hand folded in her lap and answered only when addressed. She had learned that at dinners like this, a woman could survive by becoming part of the arrangement. China, candles, flowers, daughter. All decorative. All controlled. Lord Rookham has been generous enough to advise me on the matter of Ardenwick, Lady Selina said as the first course was cleared. A country seat cannot be managed by sentiment, no matter how attached young ladies may be to old nurseries and dead mothers' gardens. Rookham smiled across the table. A household requires order. Lady Cressida understands order better than most. Does she? Asked Mr. Vale, a distant cousin with red cheeks and very little courage. She is quiet, Selina said. That is often mistaken for understanding. A few polite smiles moved around the table. Cressida lowered her gaze to her plate. She felt Tilly looking at her, but she did not look back. If she gave the child comfort too openly, Selina would notice and take it away. Lady Cressida's quietness is one of her virtues, Rookham said. In a wife, I find a peaceful temperament invaluable. The word wife entered the room dressed as compliment. Cressida felt it sit beside her. Selina lifted her glass. How fortunate that practical minds can recognize practical blessings. Cressida's fingers tightened around the napkin in her lap. Practical blessings are rarely asked what they desire, she said. The cousin coughed. The widow's fork paused above her fish. Selina turned her head slowly. Did you speak, Cressida? I said only that blessings, practical or otherwise, are usually named by those who receive them. It was not open rebellion. It was too finely worded for that. But it had an edge, and the edge reached Rookham. He regarded her with interest that made her wish she had remained silent. A clever distinction, he said. Marriage does not require endless distinctions. It requires trust. And consent, Cressida said before she could stop herself. Tilly's eyes widened at the far end of the table. Selina's smile became very still. Consent is assumed where families act in wisdom. That depends upon the family, Cressida said. For one breath, no one moved. Then Rookham laughed softly, and the sound restored the table to itself. Lady Cressida has been enlivened by her new acquaintance with ducal circles. We must forgive a little excitement. Cressida placed her right hand on the stem of her water glass. Her left remained in her lap. Under the table, Rookham's hand closed over her gloved wrist. Not with visible force. Not enough to make a scene. Just enough to remind her that a room full of witnesses did not always mean safety. His signet pressed through the kid leather at the tender place where healing had barely begun. Cressida drew a slow breath through her nose. She did not pull away. Pulling away would be noticed. Crying out would be explained. At the far end of the table, Tilly saw. The child's face changed. She looked first at Cressida, then at Rookham's hidden arm, then at the glass beside her plate. "Matilda," Selina said, warning inside the sweetness. Tilly lifted the glass with both hands. For one suspended second, Cressida understood exactly what she meant to do. "No, darling," she whispered, but too late. Tilly tipped the water over the tablecloth. The spill spread in a shining rush toward the widow's lap. The widow cried out. Mr. Vale jumped back. A footman hurried forward. Rookham released Cressida's wrist at once, his smile flickering. Tilly burst into tears with such theatrical sincerity that even Lady Selina could not rebuke her without exposing too much. "I'm sorry," Tilly sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it." Cressida stood, using the confusion to move to the child. "It is only water," she said, though her voice trembled at the edges. "No harm is done." Rookham rose as well, smoothing his cuff. "Children at dinner do create hazards." Cressida looked at him then. She wanted him to see that she knew. She wanted him to know that a child had understood him more clearly than the adults at the table had chosen to. Before he could answer, the butler appeared in the doorway. His expression carried the strained dignity of a servant announcing history while pretending it was only a caller. "His Grace, the Duke of Wycliffe, has arrived for tea, my lady." Lady Selina's composure returned with astonishing speed. "We are not yet finished. His Grace says he is prepared to wait in the drawing room." Rookham's eyes narrowed. Selina folded her napkin and rose. "Then we must not keep him waiting long. Cressida, attend to your sister. And for heaven's sake, remove that tablecloth before the whole house smells of damp linen." The household moved. The table was cleared, the widow soothed, Tilly dabbed with a handkerchief, and Cressida was given 3 minutes in the corridor to quiet the child before they were required to appear as though nothing had happened. "Did I help?" Tilly whispered. Cressida knelt beside her in the shadow near the stair. "You must never place yourself in danger for me." "But he was hurting your hand. He was reminding me to be afraid." Tilly's chin trembled. "Are you?" Cressida cupped the child's cheek with her right hand. "Yes." She made herself smile. "But not enough to let him have you." In the drawing room, Benedict Grantham stood near the mantel exactly as he had at Lady Bellwether's, but Vale House made even his stillness appear more severe. He greeted Selina, Rookham, and the other guests with flawless courtesy. Then Cressida entered with Tilly beside her, and his gaze moved at once to her face. Not her glove first. Her face. It was a small mercy, and because it was small, it nearly defeated her. "Lady Cressida," he said. "Lady Matilda." Tilly gave a clumsy curtsy. "Your Grace." Benedict's eyes rested on the faint dampness at the child's cuff, then on Cressida's pallor, then on the way her left hand remained held against the side of her skirt. He did not ask a question the room could punish her for answering. "I have spoken with my aunt," he said. "Duchess Agatha is most pleased that you have agreed to attend tomorrow." "We are honored," Selina replied. "Her Grace overestimates our usefulness." "I doubt that." Benedict accepted tea but did not drink it. "In fact, she wishes Lady Cressida to assist with the first subscription list. Several families have promised funds, but my aunt requires a lady of sense to help order the names and direct correspondence." Selina's brows lifted. "Cressida?" "Yes." Rookham smiled. "Surely her Grace has secretaries." "She has secretaries for copying. She requires judgment for precedents, tact for difficult donors, and compassion for the girls the subscription is meant to help." Benedict looked at Cressida. "I believe Lady Cressida possesses all three." The words fell into Vale House like light striking a locked room. No one applauded. No one gasped. Yet the reversal was complete. Only an hour earlier, Cressida had been discussed as a practical blessing to be transferred. Now a duke had named her judgment valuable before the same witnesses. Cressida felt Selina's displeasure sharpen beside her. She also felt Tilly's small hand slip into her right one. "You are kind, your grace," Cressida said. "No," Benedict replied. "I am accurate." Rookham set down his cup with a sound just a little too firm. "Your interest in Lady Cressida's talents grows by the day." Benedict turned to him. "Then perhaps the day has improved." The room went quiet. Lady Selina smiled because she had to. "How fortunate for us all." Benedict bowed before leaving, but at the door he paused. "My carriage will call tomorrow at 2. Duchess Agatha insists on proper escort." Selina's voice was smooth. "We would expect nothing less." After he had gone, the air he left behind seemed colder and cleaner. Cressida looked down at Tilly, who was staring at the door as if it had opened onto another country. Then Lady Selina leaned close enough that only Cressida could hear. "If you shame me before Wycliffe again," she whispered, "Matilda will be sent to Ardenwick Hall before sunrise." Cressida did not move. Her wrist still hurt. Her heart hurt more. But somewhere beyond the door, a duke had seen enough to act, and for the first time in years, Lady Selina had been forced to smile while losing ground. At 2 o'clock the next afternoon, the Wycliffe carriage arrived at Vale House with a pair of matched bays, a liveried footman, and the unmistakable authority of a household that did not ask twice. Lady Selina stood in the hall while Cressida fastened Tilly's cloak, every movement watched as though tenderness itself were suspicious. "You will remember where you are," Selina said. Her voice was low enough not to reach the footman. "You are not guests of affection. You are curiosities invited for inspection." Tilly's fingers closed around Cressida's sleeve. Cressida smoothed the child's bonnet ribbon and kept her own face calm. "We shall remember our manners. Remember your place." The words followed them down the steps. Cressida did not look back. The carriage door closed, and for the first time since Lady Bellwether's musicale, Tilly drew a full breath. The journey to Wycliffe House took less than a quarter of an hour, yet it felt like crossing from one law into another. Mayfair passed in rows of pale stone and black railings, ladies' carriages moving at a dignified pace, flower girls calling softly at corners, the air bright with early spring and coal smoke. Cressida kept her left hand folded beneath her muff though the worst of the tenderness had dulled. She had chosen a fresh pair of gloves, cream rather than ivory, and still she felt as if the missing torn glove sat between her and the world. Wycliffe House rose from its square with stern elegance, not ornate, but certain. A footman received them. A housekeeper with silver-threaded hair guided them up a broad stair. No one hurried them. No one spoke as though Tilly were a nuisance to be managed. That alone nearly brought tears to the child's eyes. Duchess Agatha Grantham received them in a morning room filled with soft green light and the quiet industry of papers, ribbons, and folded lists. She was Benedict's aunt by marriage, a widow with a straight back, keen eyes, and a cap trimmed in lace so fine it seemed almost severe. "Lady Cressida." "Lady Matilda," she said, extending both hands to Tilly as if the child were not an embarrassment, but a welcome arrival. "I have been waiting for assistance from sensible ladies. My nephew tells me you are both qualified." Tilly looked startled. "I'm only 9. 9 is old enough to know when adults are being foolish," the Duchess said. "Come. You may sort the blue ribbons from the green. I have been informed they are not the same, though my eyesight disagrees." Tilly glanced at Cressida, and Cressida gave the smallest nod. The child went to the low table, still cautious, but no longer shrinking. Cressida remained near the door until Duchess Agatha looked at her with an expression too direct to be called polite. "My dear, you may sit. In this house, ladies are not displayed like porcelain unless they have first chosen the shelf." Cressida sat because refusal would have been more revealing than obedience. Her chair was near the writing desk, where subscription lists lay beside sealed notes from families willing to lend names and money to the new charitable effort. Distressed governesses. Orphaned girls. Young women without protectors. The phrases were formal, but beneath them Cressida felt the shape of many lives arranged around the same fear. "His Grace said you required help with precedence," she said. "He said more than that," Duchess Agatha replied. "But precedence will do for a beginning. Benedict entered 10 minutes later, and the room altered without losing warmth. That surprised Cressida. At Vale House, his presence had turned every hidden threat visible. Here, among his aunt's papers and the faint scent of tea, he seemed less like judgment and more like restraint given human form. He greeted Duchess Agatha, bowed to Cressida, and asked Tilly whether the blue ribbons had survived her inspection. Most of them, Tilly said, then looked alarmed at her own boldness. Benedict's mouth softened. A stern report. The door opened again before the child could answer. A young maid entered carrying a tray with fresh tea and a small plate of seed cake. Her hands trembled when she saw the Duke. One cup slid. The porcelain struck the tray, tipped, and fell to the carpet with a clean, bright crack. The maid went white. "Oh, Your Grace, I beg pardon. I'll pay for it. I didn't mean to." Cressida rose at once. "Do not touch it with your fingers," she said gently. "There may be sharp edges." The maid froze, eyes wide. Cressida took a folded napkin from the tray and knelt, gathering the larger pieces with care. A cup can be replaced. A cut hand is less convenient. The maid looked helplessly toward the Duke. Benedict had not moved. He was watching Cressida, not the broken cup. Duchess Agatha rang for another servant with calm efficiency. "Mary, you will fetch a brush and pan," she said. "No one is paying for anything." The cup was ugly. Tilly gave a small gasp, then covered her mouth. The maid's eyes filled with grateful confusion. "Thank you, Your Grace." "Thank Lady Cressida," Duchess Agatha said. "She saved you from trying to repair porcelain with your skin." Cressida stood, suddenly aware that Benedict's attention had settled on her with a force more unsettling than admiration. "It was nothing. It was instinct," he said. She looked away first. Kindness, in Vale House, had to be quick and often hidden. Here it had been seen, named, and left unharmed. That felt dangerously intimate. When the tea was restored and the maid gone, Duchess Agatha set Tilly to drawing little labels for the ribbon bundles. "Draw whatever helps you remember," she said. "Children's symbols are often clearer than adult handwriting." Tilly bent over the paper. For a while, there was only the scratch of pencil and the soft turn of pages. Cressida helped order the subscription names, placing dowagers before younger wives, patrons before donors, rank before enthusiasm. Benedict stood near the window, occasionally answering his aunt, though Cressida sensed he was listening to everything she did not say. Then Tilly's pencil stopped. "That is not a ribbon label," Duchess Agatha said quietly. Cressida looked up. Tilly had drawn a room. Not well, but clearly enough. A square door with a heavy keyhole. A high-backed chair. A tall woman in a grey gown. A smaller figure beside the chair. And beside that figure, a man's hand with a dark oval ring. Cressida crossed the room before she meant to move. "Tilly." The child looked stricken. "I didn't mean to. It just came out." Benedict approached slowly. He did not take the paper. "May I see it?" Tilly looked at Cressida. That glance tore through her more cleanly than accusation. Cressida sat beside the child and folded her hands to hide their shaking. "You are safe in this room," she said, though she was not certain safety could be declared into existence. "But you do not have to show anyone what frightens you." Tilly swallowed. "If I don't, he'll think I made it up." Benedict's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "I do not think that. People always do when grown-ups tell them to." Duchess Agatha went very still. Cressida closed her eyes for one breath, then opened them and looked at Benedict. "Your Grace, whatever you believe you have discovered, you must not use my sister as your proof." "Cressida," Tilly whispered. "No, darling." Cressida kept her voice soft, but something inside it had become iron. A child should not have to stand in a room of adults and be brave because the adults were cowards first. Benedict received the words without defense. "You are right." The simplicity of it disarmed her. She had expected argument, strategy, perhaps even the gentle arrogance of a man accustomed to solving other people's troubles. Instead, he looked at Tilly's drawing as though it were not a tool, but a wound entrusted to the table. "I will not make a child pay for telling the truth," he said. Tilly's eyes searched his face. Promise? I promise. Dukes can break promises. Men can, Benedict said. Titles do not improve them. But I will not break this one. Cressida felt her composure waver. Not because he had offered rescue. He had not. He had offered limitation upon himself, and that was rarer. Duchess Agatha lifted the drawing carefully. May I keep this in my desk, Lady Matilda? Not to show. To guard. Tilly nodded after a long moment. If Cressida says yes. Cressida looked at the high-backed chair, the locked door, the ringed hand drawn larger than all the rest. Her past had been made small for so long that seeing it on paper felt like hearing a whisper become a bell. Yes, she said. But it remains here. Benedict bowed his head once. It remains here. Outside the morning room, a clock struck 4. In another hour, the Wycliffe carriage would return them to Vale House, to Selina's measured questions and Rookham's patient smile. Yet for one afternoon, Tilly had drawn fear and no one had punished her for it. For one afternoon, a broken cup had not ruined a servant. For one afternoon, Cressida had watched power hold itself back for the sake of gentleness. When Benedict escorted them to the carriage, he did not offer his hand until Cressida reached the step and hesitated. Even then, he waited. She placed her right hand in his. His glove was warm from the house. His grip was steady and light enough to release at the first sign of refusal. Lady Cressida, he said, too quietly for the footman to hear, your comfort will be respected here. She looked at him then. Truly looked. Comfort is a dangerous word, your grace. Then we shall begin with respect. She entered the carriage before he could see what those words had done to her. As the door closed, Tilly leaned against her side, exhausted and strangely peaceful. Cressida held her close. Behind them, Wycliffe House stood silent and watchful, and somewhere inside it, locked in Duchess Agatha's desk, a child's drawing had begun to give shape to the truth. Lady Selina allowed the opera because refusal would have looked like fear. She did not say so. She stood in Cressida's bedchamber while the maid fastened the last hook of Cressida's pale gold evening gown and spoke as if the matter were merely social. A box at the King's Theatre is not a sanctuary, she said. It is a window. Everyone looks in. Cressida met her own reflection in the glass and saw a woman arranged for public approval. Smooth hair. Modest pearls. Fresh gloves with no visible stain. A face trained not to confess. Tilly stood near the wardrobe in her best white frock, unusually solemn for a child who had once begged for every glimpse of painted scenery and bright lamps. Since their visit to Wycliffe House, she had slept without crying out, but she had also become careful in a new way. Carefulness in a child was a sorrow Cressida could hardly bear. We shall behave properly, Cressida said. Selina's gaze moved to Tilly. You will behave silently. Tilly nodded. Yes, Mamma. And you, Cressida, will remember that the Duchess's kindness is not attachment. Ladies of rank amuse themselves with causes. They do not adopt inconveniences. Cressida adjusted the edge of her glove. Then I shall endeavour not to be amusing. Selina's eyes narrowed, but the carriage was already waiting, and Wycliffe livery stood below like a public fact she could not deny. 30 minutes later, beneath the gilded tiers and candlelit haze of the opera house, Cressida understood Selina's warning. A drawing room could turn cruel, but an opera box turned cruelty into spectacle. The Duke of Wycliffe's box was placed where half the house could see who entered it, and by the time Duchess Agatha greeted Cressida and Tilly with composed warmth, fans had already lifted in nearby boxes. Eyes moved. Whispers followed. Benedict stood behind his aunt's chair, severe in evening black, his profile cut against the glow of the stage lamps. He bowed to Cressida, then to Tilly, and did not once glance at her gloves. That restraint, again, unsettled her more than open curiosity would have done. Lady Matilda, Duchess Agatha said, patting the chair beside her. You shall sit where you can see the stage. I rely on you to tell me if the soprano dies convincingly. Tilly's mouth opened. Does she die? In the second act, if the Italians can be trusted. Tilly looked horrified, then fascinated. Benedict leaned slightly toward her. It is usually temporary in opera. That doesn't seem sensible, Tilly whispered. Very little about opera is, he replied. Cressida should not have smiled, but the smile came before she could stop it. Benedict saw it. Something warmed in his expression, brief as the flare of a match, and vanished before anyone else could claim it. The music began, rich and swelling, and for a few minutes Cressida let herself be only a woman listening in a borrowed place. Then the murmurs from the opposite side of the house reached her. Lady Selina had taken a smaller box with Viscount Rookham and two elderly relations whose presence made the arrangement respectable. Rookham sat half in shadow, one gloved hand resting on the ledge, the signet turned outward for the world to admire. He looked toward the Wycliffe box not with anger, but with patience. That patience frightened Cressida more. During the first interval, a footman in plain livery appeared at the rear of the box and offered a folded note. Duchess Agatha turned her head, but the note was addressed to Lady Cressida Vale. Cressida accepted it because everyone was watching. The paper was small. The words inside were smaller. If the child appears again under Wycliffe protection, Ardenwick Hall will receive her before the week is done. No sister can follow where no invitation is issued. Cressida's fingers went cold. She folded the note once. Then twice. Tilly was laughing softly at something Duchess Agatha had said about the tenor's wig. The sound made the threat more terrible. Lady Cressida, Benedict said. He had not moved closer, yet his voice reached her under the rising chatter. You have gone pale. The air is close. Then shall I ask my aunt to take you out? No, the word came too quickly. If she left, people would watch. If she stayed, Rookham would watch. If she did nothing, Tilly might be taken. The opera house blurred around her, all jewels and feathers and painted faces. Cressida stood. I believe we should return home. Tilly turned at once. Already? The disappointment in her voice nearly broke Cressida. It is late. The second act hasn't started. Selina's box remained across the way, waiting. Benedict looked toward it, then back at Cressida. Has someone requested your departure? Your Grace, please do not ask me that here. Then I will ask something else. Do you wish to leave? The question struck differently because he did not ask whether she ought to leave, or whether it would be wise, or whether scandal might follow. He asked what she wished. Cressida had not been asked such a thing in so long that the answer did not immediately come. She looked at Tilly, then at the note folded beneath her glove. I wish my sister to be safe. That is not the same answer. It is the only one that matters. Benedict's jaw tightened. Before he could reply, Duchess Agatha spoke in a clear voice designed to travel no farther than the box and yet shape everything within it. Lady Cressida, I have been meaning to ask your opinion on the subscription list. Cressida looked at her, startled. Now, Your Grace. Especially now. Half of London is watching my box instead of the stage. We might as well reward them with evidence of useful conversation. Benedict's eyes remained on Cressida. A choice opened before her, narrow and frightening. To leave would protect Tilly for the moment, perhaps. It would also teach Rookham that a note could move her like a string tied to her wrist. To stay would risk his anger. It might also prove she was not alone. Cressida Saturday. Duchess Agatha drew a paper from her reticule as if she truly had been waiting all evening to discuss charity. There are 3 families wishing to be listed before Lady Morecambe, though 2 gave less and 1 gave nothing at all except advice. What would you do? A few nearby heads turned. Cressida felt heat rise in her cheeks. She was being invited to speak, not as ornament, not as burden, but as a woman whose judgment mattered. She folded her hands in her lap to hide the note. I would place the donors according to rank in the first printed notice, she said slowly, but in the private account book, I would list the actual sums and obligations clearly. Vanity may open purses once. Accuracy keeps the charity alive after vanity becomes bored. Duchess Agatha's eyes lit with approval. Excellent. Benedict said nothing, but the silence beside her was no longer distant. It was shelter. Lady Bellwether, in the neighbouring box, leaned forward. How practical, Lady Cressida. I had not thought of that. Another lady added, nor I. Cressida felt the opera house shift around her. The whispers did not cease, but their flavour changed. Moments earlier, she had been a curiosity beneath ducal notice. Now she was a lady consulted by a duchess and answered before society without stumbling. Across the house, Lady Selina's fan had stopped moving. Rookham's smile had disappeared. Tilly slipped one hand toward Cressida's sleeve, not clutching, only touching, as if to say she had seen it, too. Benedict placed the evening's program on the ledge beside Cressida's trembling fingers. It was a small gesture, almost nothing. The paper covered the folded note beneath her glove. No one else would notice. Cressida did. "Thank you," she murmured. "Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. "I have done very little." Sometimes very little is the difference between standing and falling. His gaze turned to her then, and the noise of the opera house seemed to recede behind the curtain. "Then stand," he said. "I am here." The second act began, and Cressida remained in the Wycliffe box. She did not look again toward Rookham. She did not need to. She could feel his displeasure like a draft against the back of her neck, but it no longer owned the air she breathed. When the soprano died beautifully and temporarily, Tilly forgot herself enough to whisper that it was the least sensible death she had ever seen. Duchess Agatha laughed. Benedict almost did. For that one breath, Cressida allowed herself to imagine a life in which a child's laughter did not have to be measured against punishment. The illusion lasted until the final curtain. As the audience rose in a storm of silken applause, another footman approached Benedict at the rear of the box. This one wore Wycliffe livery and carried a sealed letter on a small tray. Benedict broke the seal, read the first line, and went utterly still. Cressida saw the change before he hid it. "Your Grace," she asked. He folded the letter with controlled care, but not before she glimpsed her own name written in a hand disturbingly like hers. His expression closed, colder than it had been all evening. "Lady Cressida," he said, "there appears to be a matter we must discuss." Benedict did not open the matter in the opera box, and that restraint saved Cressida from immediate ruin while making the journey to Wycliffe House feel like a sentence already passed. Duchess Agatha insisted that the party return there first, since Tilly was drowsy and the streets outside the theatre were thick with carriages. No one objected. Lady Selina had already departed with Viscount Rookham, leaving behind one final glance from across the corridor that told Cressida the evening had not escaped her stepmother's notice. In the Wycliffe carriage, Tilly slept against Cressida's side, her small bonnet bent against the velvet cushion. Duchess Agatha looked out the window with the rigid calm of a woman who understood that asking questions before safety had been secured was another form of carelessness. Benedict sat opposite Cressida, the sealed letter folded in his gloved hand. He had not accused her. He had not reassured her. That was worse. Silence could be mercy, but it could also be preparation. Cressida kept her hand still in her lap and counted the passing lamps until the carriage turned into the square before Wycliffe House. Only when Tilly had been taken by Duchess Agatha to rest in a small sitting room adjoining the morning room did Benedict lead Cressida to his study. The room was quiet, lined with books and shadowed by green-shaded lamps. A fire burned low. On his desk lay the opera program he had used to cover Rookham's note, as if even small acts of protection had become evidence in a trial neither of them had requested. "Lady Cressida," Benedict said, standing behind his desk without sitting. "A letter was delivered to me tonight." "So I saw." Her voice sounded calm. She was grateful for that. "It bears your name." "Many things may bear a name." "And a hand remarkably similar to yours." She looked at the folded paper. "May I see it?" He hesitated. The hesitation was small. It was enough. She felt it land inside her before the letter did. He gave it to her. Cressida unfolded it and read words she had never written, arranged in phrases that seemed to know the wounds of her life and mock them with elegant precision. It claimed she had encouraged Tilly to approach him at Lady Belwether's musicale. It claimed the glove had been displayed deliberately. It claimed that a marriage to a duke would protect her from a less desirable arrangement and that she was prepared to deepen society sympathy if required. The final sentence was the cruelest because it sounded almost like cleverness. A child's tears open doors that a spinster's face cannot. Cressida read it once. Then she read it again because outrage, like grief, sometimes required confirmation. "This is not mine." Benedict said nothing. "You know it is not mine." Still, he did not answer quickly enough. The study seemed to grow colder around the fire. Cressida set the letter on the desk, smoothing it once with fingers that had begun to tremble. "Ask what you came here to ask, Your Grace." His jaw tightened. "I do not believe you wrote that sentence." "That is not the same as believing me." No, the honesty should have comforted her. It did not. Benedict looked down at the paper, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw something uncontrolled move through him. Not anger at her. Not only that. Memory, perhaps. A wound hidden behind rank. "There was a scandal in my family years ago," he said. "A cousin used a child to force a negotiation. Tears. Letters. Public sympathy. By the time the truth emerged, 2 families had been destroyed and the child remembered nothing except being praised for lying well." Cressida listened without softening. She could pity the wound and still refuse to bleed for it. "Then you have reason to hate manipulation." "Yes. And no reason to place it upon me." His eyes lifted to hers. "Did you know the child would come to me?" The question did not shout. It did not need to. Cressida felt the words strike more deeply because he had spoken them with care, as if gentleness could change their shape. For several seconds she could not breathe properly. In that room, under that controlled gaze, she was suddenly back at every table where her silence had been treated as consent, every drawing room where her pain had required certification, every closed door where she had learned that the first instinct of power was often doubt. "No," she said. "I did not. Lady Cressida." No, this time the word was quieter, but it stopped him. She removed her right glove first because she needed the movement to be deliberate. Then she reached for the left. The fresh cream leather resisted at the wrist. Her fingers were clumsy. She hated that. She hated that he could see. At last the glove came free, revealing a fading mark beneath the skin, yellowed at the edges, violet at the center where pressure had settled days before. Benedict went still. Cressida laid the glove on his desk beside the forged letter. "There," she said. "You have the old glove somewhere, I imagine. You have this one now. You have a letter with my name. You have a child's drawing locked away in your aunt's desk. How convenient it must be to wait until evidence arranges itself before deciding whether a woman is telling the truth. Cressida." The use of her name without title should have warmed her in another life. In this one, it hurt. "Do not." He stopped. She picked up the forged letter again and looked at the handwriting. It was close. Too close. Whoever had made it had seen her notes, her careful slant, the way she shaped capital letters because her governess had once praised them. Vale House had many drawers. Many servants. Many people with reasons to survive by obeying Lady Selina. "Who else has seen this?" she asked. "Only my aunt and myself." "And whoever sent it?" "Yes. By morning, others will have seen something like it." Benedict's silence confirmed what he had not wished to say. Cressida gave a short, humorless breath. "Of course. A private lie is rarely worth the effort unless a public one follows. I have already sent word to 2 newspaper men that any printed mention of Lady Matilda will be answered by Wycliffe solicitors." How protective. The words escaped before she could soften them. His face changed. She was glad. She wanted him to feel something unpleasant. "You are right," he said. "It is not enough." "No. It is not." She reached for Tilly's shawl, which Duchess Agatha had placed over a chair earlier. The sight of it steadied her. The child was close. Safe for the moment. That was the only thing that mattered. "I should return to my sister. You cannot go back to Vale House tonight." "I know." "Then remain here. My aunt will make every proper arrangement." "Under your protection?" she asked. He did not answer. She smiled faintly, and the expression felt unfamiliar on her face. "That is the difficulty, Your Grace. Protection offered by a man who doubts the person he protects can become another room with a locked door." Benedict flinched as if the words had crossed the space and touched him. Cressida looked at the glove on his desk. The cream leather lay open, limp and pale beside the forged letter. The 2 objects seemed to belong together, one proof of injury and one proof of accusation. She picked up neither. Keep your evidence, Your Grace. I shall keep my dignity. She turned before he could answer and opened the study door herself. In the corridor, Duchess Agatha stood waiting, her expression grave. She had heard enough. Perhaps not every word, but enough to understand the wound had changed shape. My dear, the Duchess said softly. The carriage is ready if you wish to leave. Mine, not his. Cressida nearly broke then. Not because of kindness alone, but because it came with choice. Thank you, Your Grace. I would like to take Tilly somewhere my stepmother cannot reach tonight. Then we shall see it done. Tilly woke as soon as Cressida entered the sitting room. Are we going home? Not tonight. The child searched her face. Did he believe you? Cressida tied the shawl gently beneath Tilly's chin. He is learning what belief costs. Tilly looked toward the study door, her small mouth trembling. I thought dukes knew everything. No, darling. They only have more rooms in which to be wrong. Duchess Agatha's carriage carried them away from Wycliffe House before midnight, with 2 trusted footmen and no crest displayed on the door. Cressida did not look back, though she felt the pull of the house behind her like a question left unanswered. In the study above the quiet street, Benedict remained where she had left him. The glove lay beside the forged letter. He unfolded the older torn glove from the locked drawer and placed it next to the fresh one. 2 marks. Same wrist. Same curve. Same oval pressure at the center. His breath slowed. He crossed to the lamp and angled the leather beneath the light. The darker oval was not random. It bore the faint impression of a crest, pressed through kid leather by a ring worn too often and too proudly. Benedict saw again Rookham's hand on the opera box ledge, the signet turned outward for admiration. He saw Tilly's drawing. The large ringed hand. The locked room. The high-backed chair. He had asked the wrong question. The realization did not arrive as shame alone. It arrived as duty, cold and exact. Benedict folded the forged letter, placed it beneath the torn glove, and rang for Hargreaves. When the valet appeared, Benedict did not turn from the desk. Wake no one except my secretary, he said. Then send a man to the jeweller in Bond Street who made Viscount Rookham's signet. Hargreaves bowed. Tonight, Your Grace. Benedict looked at the 2 gloves, one torn and one abandoned. Before morning. By dawn, scandal had already reached Vale House ahead of Cressida. It waited in the breakfast room beside the untouched toast, in Lady Selina's folded newspaper, and in the way every servant lowered his eyes when Duchess Agatha's carriage stopped before the steps. Cressida had spent the night with Tilly under the Duchess's protection at a quiet widowed cousin's house in Brook Street, proper enough to satisfy the rules and discreet enough to deny gossip a doorway. It had not been sleep. It had been a pause. Now the pause was over. Tilly clung to her hand as they entered, and Cressida felt the child's fingers tremble inside their small glove. She had promised safety, but Vale House received promises the way stone received rain. It darkened and remained unchanged. Lady Selina sat at the breakfast table in dove-grey silk, already dressed as if she had risen to preside over judgment rather than eat. Viscount Rookham stood by the window with his hat in one hand and satisfaction in the other. A gossip sheet lay open on the table. Cressida saw her own name hinted at without being printed, which was worse. A certain lady of noble birth. A charitable duke. A childish performance. A glove. A scheme. The words did not accuse directly. They invited society to do it for them. How touching, Selina said. The lost daughter's return. Cressida removed Tilly's bonnet and handed it to the maid. Tilly was tired after the opera. Duchess Agatha made proper arrangements. Duchess Agatha interfered. Duchess Agatha protected a child from being dragged through late-night speculation. Rookham smiled. You have adopted a grand tone since Wycliffe began noticing you. Cressida looked at him with the calm she had once wasted on survival. No. I have merely stopped mistaking your approval for safety. His smile faded. Selina folded the gossip sheet with deliberate care. Enough. You have created a situation that must be repaired at once. Lord Rookham has been generous beyond measure. Despite your display, despite your sister's nonsense, despite the unfortunate attention you have invited, he is willing to proceed. Tilly made a small sound. Cressida's hand tightened around hers. Proceed with what? Selina's eyes chilled. Do not be tiresome. You will accept his offer. Today. A quiet announcement will be made among family connections, and this ridiculous tale of dukes and gloves will die by supper. I have received no offer. Rookham stepped forward. Then receive it now. Lady Cressida, I am prepared to overlook this week's confusion and make you my wife. His tone was gracious enough for a chapel. His eyes were not. Cressida did not answer quickly. She let the silence stand, and for once she did not rush to soften it for anyone else. No, she said. Selina's face did not move. You will be careful. I am being careful. That is why I said no. You are 28, dependent, and publicly compromised. Not by any act of mine. By perception, Selina snapped. The first crack in her Polish showed and vanished. Perception is what feeds families like ours. You will not ruin this house because a duke looked at you twice and made you foolish. Rookham lowered his voice. Think of Lady Matilda. Ardenwick Hall is ready to receive her. There it was. Not hidden. Not softened. A door closing around a child. Tilly pressed herself against Cressida's side, and something in Cressida, long folded and refolded into obedience, became straight. Tilly, she said, go upstairs and put your drawing book in your small satchel. Selina stood. She will do no such thing. She will. Cressida looked at the maid by the door. Jenny, please accompany Lady Matilda. Do not leave her. The maid hesitated. Then, perhaps because Duchess Agatha's carriage still waited outside and Wycliffe livery could be seen through the window, she curtsied. Yes, my lady. Tilly looked up at Cressida. Are we leaving? Yes. Where? Somewhere with doors that open from the inside. Tilly went very pale, then nodded as if she understood too much. When she had gone, Selina came around the table. You have no money. A little. From my mother. You have no protector. I have a name. A name does not pay lodging. No. But it opens an office door. Rookham's expression sharpened. You intend to consult someone. A solicitor. The word changed the room. Not dramatically. No one gasped. But Selina's hand closed over the back of a chair, and Rookham's gaze flicked toward the folded paper near her plate. Cressida saw it. Account papers. House papers. The sort of things Selina did not usually leave visible. The sight gave Cressida more courage than anger could have given. Anger burned. Evidence endured. You will not take a family matter outside this house, Selina said. I am taking my sister outside this house. You are not her guardian. Neither are you her owner. Selina stared at her. You will regret this before nightfall. Very likely. Cressida moved to the small writing desk near the wall, where household notes and account lists were often placed before being sent to the steward. She had copied enough of them over the years to know Selina's systems, her economies, her hidden extravagancies. Her gaze passed over menus, coal charges, milliners' receipts, and then stopped at a folded sheet half tucked beneath a ledger. Rookham's name appeared twice. Not as guest. Not as creditor. Payment acknowledged. Ardenwick timber advance. Marriage settlement discussion. Cressida did not reach for it immediately. She rang the bell first. The footman entered. Send word to Mrs. Augusta Penn in Half Moon Street that Lady Cressida Vale requests a call within the hour, she said. Selina laughed once. Your old governess? You would drag that poor woman into this. Mrs. Penn taught me handwriting, accounts, and the unfortunate habit of reading what is placed before me. Cressida picked up the folded sheet and slipped it into her reticule. Rookham took one step forward. That is not yours. It concerns my marriage. I believe it gives me an interest. It concerns family management, Selina said. So does selling a daughter. The words rang too clearly. Cressida felt them leave her and knew they could not be gathered back. She did not wish to gather them. Upstairs, small feet sounded on the landing. Tilly returned with Jenny, holding a satchel against her chest. Cressida crossed to her. "Did you bring your shawl?" "And the blue pencil," Tilly whispered. "I don't know why." "Because you wanted it." "Am I allowed?" Cressida touched the child's cheek. "Yes." Selina's voice cut across the hall. "If you cross that threshold, Cressida, do not imagine Wycliffe will repair what you break. Men of his rank enjoy causes until causes become inconvenient." Cressida paused at the door. Benedict's face rose in her mind. The wrong question. The glove on his desk. The pain of being doubted by the one man who had seemed willing to see. "This is not about his grace," she said. "That is what you have never understood. I am not leaving because a duke may save me. I am leaving because I refuse to be handed from one locked room to another." Mrs. Augusta Penn arrived 40 minutes later in a plain hired carriage, wearing a black bonnet, sensible gloves, and the expression of a woman who had survived enough genteel disasters to be impressed by none. She took one look at Cressida, one at Tilly, and one at Lady Selina watching from the drawing-room doorway. Then she said, "My dears, get in." The carriage moved through London under a sky the colour of pewter. Cressida sat with Tilly beside her and Mrs. Penn opposite, the reticule clutched in both hands. Inside it lay the household sheet, the gossip paper, and a small cream glove she had taken from her drawer before leaving. Not the torn one. That was gone. Not the one abandoned on Benedict's desk. That was gone, too. But this glove bore the memory of the same wrist, and memory, she was beginning to understand, could be arranged into proof. "We shall go first to Mr. Alden in Chancery Lane," Mrs. Penn said. "He handled your mother's small settlement years ago. He is cautious, which is better than clever." Tilly leaned against Cressida. "Will he make Mrs. Vale send me away?" "No," Cressida said, before fear could answer. "We are going to ask what can be done. And if nothing can?" Cressida looked out at the passing shops, the wet wheels, the respectable city that hid so many private terrors behind polished doors. "Then we shall ask someone else." At the solicitor's office, Mr. Alden was indeed cautious. He was small, grey-haired, and so disturbed by the sight of Lady Cressida Vale without a male relative that he offered tea twice and advice not at all until Mrs. Penn fixed him with a governess's stare. Cressida placed the gossip sheet on his desk. Then the account paper. Then the glove. "I need to know what rights I have," she said. "And what rights my sister has." Mr. Alden looked at the glove last. His expression changed. "My lady," he said slowly, "this may be more useful than any spoken accusation." Cressida's hand closed around Tilly's. For the first time since the music had stopped at Lady Belwether's, she did not feel rescued. She felt awake. Before the bells of St. George's had finished striking 9, Benedict Grantham knew the exact shape of the ring that had marked Lady Cressida Vale's glove. The answer came not with drama, but with a jeweller's careful pencil rubbing laid flat upon his desk. Mr. Pelham of Bond Street had arrived pale, nervous, and eager to explain that gentlemen of standing often ordered signets through respectable houses and that discretion was the soul of his profession. Benedict allowed him to speak until the man's fear emptied itself. Then he placed the torn ivory glove beside the rubbing. The match was unmistakable. The same oval border. The same blunt curve of the crest. The same small flaw near the lower edge where the die had been cut imperfectly and never corrected because Viscount Rookham had liked old things to look inherited. "You made this ring," Benedict said. Mr. Pelham swallowed. "The original was repaired by my father. I made the replacement 2 years ago, Your Grace." Lord Rookham said the old one had split at the band. "And you can attest to that?" "In writing." The jeweller looked toward the glove, then away. "If required." "It is required." Benedict's voice was quiet. That quiet had governed estates, silenced committee rooms, and ended friendships that had grown careless with honor. It served now. Mr. Pelham reached for the pen with a trembling hand. On the other side of the desk, Hargreaves placed another packet before his master. "From Vale House, Your Grace. Obtained through the footman who passed the laundry parcel." He says the paper used for the forged note matches the sheets kept in Lady Selina's small escritoire. The ink, however, is unusual. Brown-black. Lord Rookham's man buys the same from a stationer near St. James's Street. Benedict opened the packet. A sample of paper. A note from the footman. A stationer's bill copied in a neat hand. None of it would satisfy a court by itself, and Benedict had no intention of turning Cressida's life into a public legal spectacle unless she chose that road. But society rarely required a judge when a drawing-room full of ranked witnesses would do. He looked again at the glove. 2 nights earlier, he had asked Cressida whether she had known Tilly would come to him. He had said the words carefully, even gently, which made them worse. Cruelty was not excused because a man used a softer voice. He had taken an old wound from his own family and set it at her feet as though pain were transferable evidence. The realization had kept him awake until dawn. It had not become easier with light. "Your Grace," Hargreaves said, "there is more." Benedict lifted his eyes. "Lady Selina has sent cards for a gathering tomorrow afternoon. A small circle. Family connections, 2 patronesses, Lord Rookham, and persons known to repeat what they hear. Purpose? To settle the scandal, according to the wording." Benedict's mouth hardened. "To trap her. So it appears." Benedict folded the jeweller's statement once the ink was dry and placed it beside the glove. "Send word to Duchess Agatha. Ask her to call upon Mrs. Augusta Penn within the hour. I shall follow." Hargreaves bowed. "And the solicitors?" "Ready, but not paraded. Lady Cressida is not a case file." He paused, then added, "Nor is she to be managed." The words were meant for his household. They struck Benedict first. Mrs. Penn's lodging in Half Moon Street was modest, clean, and fiercely respectable. The sitting-room smelled faintly of beeswax, tea, and old books. Cressida stood when Benedict entered, not because she wished to honor him, but because manners were armor and she had worn them too long to set them down easily. Tilly sat beside the window with a pencil in her hand, though the page before her remained blank. Duchess Agatha occupied the chair nearest the hearth. Mrs. Penn stood behind Cressida like a small, immovable wall. Benedict bowed to them all. "Lady Cressida." "Your Grace." Her voice did not tremble. That made his shame sharper. "I am grateful you agreed to see me. I agreed because your aunt asked, and because Mr. Alden believes you may have information useful to my sister's safety." "Not to her. To her sister." She gave him no warmer motive to hold. He deserved none. Benedict remained standing. "Then I will begin with information. Mr. Pelham of Bond Street has identified the impression on the glove as matching Viscount Rookham's signet. I have his written statement. There is also evidence that the forged letter used paper from Vale House and ink purchased by Rookham's man." Cressida's lashes lowered. For one moment, relief passed over her face. It did not soften into gratitude. "So now the evidence is convenient." "Yes." Her eyes returned to his. That was not an invitation to agree. "No. But it is the truth." Tilly looked up from the window. "Did you find out because you believed her, or did you believe her because you found out?" The room became very still. Duchess Agatha closed her eyes briefly, as if the child had placed a pin exactly where it belonged. Benedict turned toward Tilly. "The second," he said. "And I was wrong." Tilly's pencil rolled from her lap to the carpet. "You made her quiet again." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Cressida's face changed, only a little, but Benedict saw the pain she tried to spare him and the child both. "Tilly," she whispered. "It's true," Tilly said, her voice breaking. At the opera, she was talking. She was almost smiling. Then after the letter, she stopped. Benedict accepted the accusation because any defense would have made it smaller. "You are right, Lady Matilda. I harmed something I should have guarded." Tilly searched his face with the grave suspicion of a child who had learned adults apologized most readily when they wanted to escape consequence. "Are you sorry because you were wrong, or because she left?" "Both. But I was wrong before she left." Cressida looked away first. Mrs. Penn poured tea with brisk precision, though no one had asked for it. The ordinary sound of china steadied the room enough for Benedict to face the person he had truly come to answer. Lady Cressida, I owe you an apology without condition. I doubted you at the moment when doubt was most useful to your enemies. I asked a question shaped by my own history and placed it upon your character. That was unjust. I cannot undo it by discovering proof afterward. Cressida's fingers rested on the arm of her chair. They were bare, and the sight of her ungloved hands affected him more deeply than tears would have done. She had come here not as a rescued woman, but as someone prepared to act without him. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing you do not choose to give. Men say that when they are certain choice will favor them. Then distrust the sentence until my conduct earns better. A faint flicker crossed her face. Not amusement. Not forgiveness. Something that might, in time, permit either. You have evidence. Yes. And Lady Selina has called a gathering. She has. Then she means to declare me unstable, compromised, or in need of rescue by Lord Rookham. I believe so. And you would prevent that. I would help you prevent it. The difference mattered. He saw that she heard it, though she did not reward him for learning. Mr. Alden, the cautious solicitor, stepped from the adjoining room where he had been reviewing the papers with Mrs. Penn. My lady, if I may, a gathering of witnesses may be turned to advantage, provided the evidence is introduced in the correct order. No, Cressida said at once. Not if that means Tilly must speak before them. Benedict answered before the solicitor could. She will not. Tilly's shoulders lowered a fraction. Cressida noticed. Her expression tightened with feeling she refused to show. And the drawing, she asked. It remains with my aunt unless you ask otherwise. Duchess Agatha nodded. Locked in my desk, as promised. Cressida breathed in slowly. Then what remains? Benedict placed the folded statement on the table but did not push it toward her. A glove. A signet. A forged letter. A household account showing money moving between Lady Selina and Rookham. A maid who may speak if protected. And you, if you decide to speak. If I decide. Yes. She stood and crossed to the window. Outside, a flower seller called beneath the grey sky, her basket bright against the wet pavement. Cressida watched her for a moment as if ordinary commerce belonged to another world. I cannot give my life to a man who believes me only after the evidence becomes convenient, she said. Benedict felt the words enter and settle. I know. Do you? She turned back. Because tomorrow, if I walk into that room beside you, society will assume you are my protector. Lady Selina will say I have trapped you. Lord Rookham will say I have staged everything. If you speak first, I become your cause. If you speak too late, I become their prey. Then you must speak first. Her gaze held his. This time, there was no fear of him in it. Only measure. And you would allow that. Allow is the wrong word. Good, she said quietly. That single word gave him more hope than he deserved. A knock sounded below stairs, followed by hurried footsteps. Mrs. Penn's maid entered with a card on a small tray. Mrs. Penn took it, read, and looked at Cressida. From Lady Selina. Delivered to this address, which means she knows where you are. Cressida accepted the card. Her face did not change as she read it. Then she passed it to Benedict. The words were elegant, brief, and venomous beneath the ink. Lady Selina requested Lady Cressida's presence the following afternoon at Vale House to settle, before trusted friends, the unfortunate misunderstanding that had placed her family under scrutiny. Tilly moved closer to Cressida. Do we have to go? Cressida folded the card once. Her hands were steady now. Yes, she said. But not because she summoned me. She looked at Benedict, then at Duchess Agatha, Mrs. Penn, and Mr. Alden. Because this time, I shall bring the truth with me. The plan was formed in Mrs. Penn's sitting room while London darkened beyond the windows and every lamp seemed to draw the company closer to the truth. Cressida stood beside the small round table, the card from Lady Selina lying open near the tea tray, its elegant handwriting inviting her back to Vale House as if a trap became less cruel when engraved upon thick paper. Duchess Agatha had sent for the old glove from Wycliffe House, and Hargreaves himself had brought it in a locked dispatch box, along with Mr. Pelham's signed statement and the folded note from the opera. Mr. Alden sorted the papers twice, because caution was his natural form of courage. Tilly sat on the hearth rug with her knees tucked beneath her, watching the adults with solemn eyes. She had not been sent from the room. Cressida had insisted upon that. A child who had been used as a reason for silence deserved to see that truth did not always lead to punishment. Benedict stood near the mantel, not commanding the discussion, though every instinct in him appeared made for command. That restraint had its own tension. He could have arranged everything within an hour. He had the rank, the solicitors, the servants, the carriages, the witnesses, the reach. Yet each time Mr. Alden asked a question, Benedict looked to Cressida before answering, as if teaching himself in public that protection without permission was merely control dressed in finer cloth. "There is one direct way to end this," he said at last. Cressida looked up. "There usually is, when men begin sentences that way." Duchess Agatha lowered her teacup to hide a very small smile. Benedict did not take offense. "I could announce an engagement before Lady Selina has time to speak. Rookham would lose his claim at once. Your reputation would be shielded. Lady Matilda's removal would become far more difficult while you stood under Wycliffe protection." The room went quiet. Tilly's hands tightened on the blue pencil she had carried since leaving Vale House. Mrs. Penn's expression sharpened. Mr. Alden looked relieved, because solicitors often preferred solutions that put a powerful name between danger and uncertainty. Cressida felt no relief. She felt the familiar outline of a door. It was not Ardenwick Hall. It was not Rookham's house. It was not Lady Selina's blue room. It was gilded, safe, and opened by a duke. It was still a door she had not chosen to walk through. "No," she said. Benedict's face did not change, but something in his eyes accepted the answer before his pride could rise against it. "No. Not as a shield. It would work. So would silence. So would obedience. Many things work when the only goal is preventing immediate disaster." She touched the old glove lying in the dispatch box, not lifting it, only placing 2 fingers near the torn wrist. "I will not be traded from one arrangement into another because each man involved can argue his version is kinder." Benedict's breath moved once, slow and controlled. "I was not offering trade." "Were you offering choice?" He answered carefully. "I intended to." "Then hear mine." Cressida met his gaze across the table, and to her own surprise, she did not tremble. "I will not let Lady Selina say I trapped you into marriage. I will not let Lord Rookham say you were forced by scandal. I will not let London believe a child's fear was a ladder I climbed toward a coronet. If you ever speak of marriage to me, it will not be in the shadow of an accusation." Tilly looked between them. "But you could marry him later." "Tilly," Mrs. Penn murmured. The child flushed. "I'm only asking." Benedict's mouth softened, though his eyes remained on Cressida. "A fair question." Cressida felt warmth climb into her cheeks and refused to let it scatter her. "Later is not tomorrow's business." "No," Benedict said. "Tomorrow's business is truth." "Yes." He came around the table, then stopped several feet away, leaving the space between them intact. "Then let me say this once, plainly, and you may do with it what you choose. I do want to marry you." The words landed without flourish. That made them more dangerous. Duchess Agatha looked into the fire. Mrs. Penn suddenly became absorbed in refolding a napkin. Mr. Alden discovered a great interest in his spectacles. Cressida forgot the glove, the card, even the threat waiting at Vale House. She heard only the steadiness in Benedict's voice and the terrible tenderness of being wanted when she had expected only to be believed. "Do not say that because Tilly asked you to," she said. "I am not. Do not say it because your honor has become entangled with mine. My honor was mine to manage before I met you. It has behaved no better since." She almost smiled. Almost. Benedict took that small mercy and did not press it. "I am saying it because I have seen you protect a child while frightened, spare a maid while humiliated, answer a duchess with more sense than half her committee, and leave a house that trained you to believe leaving was impossible. I want to marry you because when truth was costly, you carried it anyway. But I am not asking tonight. I forfeited the right to ask anything of you when I doubted you." Cressida looked down before he could see too much. Her heart ached with something not yet safe enough to become joy. "Then stand with me tomorrow without claiming me." "I will. Let me speak first." "Yes. If I falter, do not rescue me before I have tried." His eyes darkened with feeling held under discipline. "I will not take your voice." Tilly rose from the rug and crossed to the dispatch box. She looked at the old glove with the seriousness of a witness twice her age. "Will she have to wear it?" "No," Cressida said quickly. "No, darling." Tilly picked it up anyway, very carefully, holding it by the fingertips as if it were alive and easily hurt. "Then she should carry it." She brought it to Cressida. "Don't hide it this time." Cressida's throat tightened. "I hid it because I wanted to keep you safe." "I know." Tilly pressed the glove into her hand. "But hiding didn't keep us safe. It only made them think no one saw." Benedict turned away for a moment, and Cressida knew he did so to give her privacy with her tears before they formed. She folded the glove once. The leather was soft from wear, the stain faint yet undeniable. It no longer looked like shame. It looked like a sentence interrupted before completion. Duchess Agatha stood. "Then tomorrow we go together. I shall attend as witness and chaperone. Mrs. Penn will attend as Lady Cressida's companion. Mr. Alden will attend with the papers, but he will not speak unless required." "And me?" Tilly asked. Cressida turned at once. "You do not have to come. I want to. That room may be unkind. Rooms are only unkind when everyone in them pretends not to see." Cressida closed her hand around the glove. The child had learned too much, but some of what she had learned was courage. "You may come," she said, "but you will not be asked to prove anything." Tilly nodded, satisfied by that boundary. Benedict moved to the door and gave quiet instructions for the carriage arrangements, 2 footmen, and a discreet route that would avoid the busiest streets near Vale House until the appointed hour. When he returned, Cressida was standing at the window. The glass reflected her face over the dark street, and she hardly recognized the woman looking back. Not safe. Not healed. Not yet loved without fear. But no longer waiting. Benedict stopped beside her, with proper distance between them. "If you are ruined after this," he said, "I will be ruined beside you, and call it the first honest thing London has seen all season." She looked at his reflection in the window. "You say reckless things very calmly. It is a ducal failing." "No," she said softly. "It is a human one." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Mrs. Penn announced that all heroic declarations must wait until after sandwiches, because frightened women, repentant dukes, and courageous children were equally useless when hungry. Tilly laughed. The sound was small, but real. Later, when the carriage stood ready to take Benedict and Duchess Agatha back to Wycliffe House, Tilly slipped her hand into Cressida's and looked at the glove now resting in Cressida's reticule. "Tomorrow," the child whispered, "will Mrs. Vale be angry?" "Yes." "Are you afraid?" Cressida thought of Selina's drawing room, Rookham's signet, the gossiping matrons, the old rules that had kept her silent. Then she thought of her own voice saying no. "Yes," she said. But fear is not an instruction. The next afternoon, as the hour approached, Cressida stepped into Duchess Agatha's carriage with the bruised glove in her bare hand. Benedict sat opposite her, silent and steady. This time, his silence did not ask her to shrink. It made room for her to rise. The carriage stopped before Vale House at precisely 4 o'clock, when Mayfair drawing rooms were most dangerous because everyone inside them could pretend the cruelty was only conversation. Cressida looked at the familiar steps through the carriage window and felt no nostalgia. The house seemed smaller than it had when she lived beneath its rules, yet the windows still watched like cold eyes, and the polished knocker still gleamed with the confidence of a family that expected doors to open in its favor. Tilly sat beside her, both hands folded tightly in her lap. Duchess Agatha occupied the opposite seat, straight-backed and formidable in deep violet silk. Benedict sat beside his aunt, silent, gloved, and still. Mrs. Penn and Mr. Alden had followed in a second carriage with the papers arranged in a dispatch case, because truth, Cressida had discovered, travelled better when accompanied by witnesses and good leather. "You do not have to look brave," Benedict said quietly. Cressida turned from the window. "I thought that was the point of arriving in a ducal carriage." "No. The point is arriving with the right to leave." Tilly looked up at him. "Will we leave if they are horrid?" "The instant your sister wishes it." Cressida felt the words touch the place where fear had been sitting since morning. Not vanish. Fear did not vanish because a man offered gentleness. But it moved aside enough for breath. "I will not leave before I speak," she said. Benedict inclined his head. "Then I shall wait until you have." The footman opened the carriage door. For one brief moment, the afternoon noise of London entered, wheels on stone, distant calls, the damp smell of horses and rain. Then Cressida stepped down with the old glove in her bare right hand. She had chosen not to hide it in her reticule. It looked almost harmless folded against her palm, a worn piece of ivory leather, small enough to be crushed, strong enough now to unsettle a room. The Vale butler's face did not change when he opened the door, but his eyes flicked to the glove, then to Benedict, then quickly down. The hall had been filled with flowers. Lilies, mostly. Their sweetness made the air heavy. Lady Selina had always understood the value of fragrance when she wanted to cover rot. Voices came from the front drawing-room, too many for a private family correction, too polished for concern. Cressida recognized Lady Bellwether's light laugh, Mrs. Harcourt's nasal whisper, the deeper tones of two family cousins, and beneath them all the measured patience of Viscount Rookham. Duchess Agatha touched Cressida's arm only once. "Center of the room, my dear. Not the edge." Cressida nodded. Tilly slipped her small hand into Cressida's left one, then seemed to remember the mark and loosened her grip. Cressida held on more firmly. "You are not hurting me," she whispered. The drawing-room doors opened. Lady Selina had arranged herself beside the tea-table, not the mantel, which allowed her to appear hospitable rather than commanding. She wore grey again, softened with pearls, her expression composed into sorrowful endurance. Around her sat the chosen audience. Lady Bellwether with her fan. Mrs. Harcourt, who had repeated half the scandals of London while claiming to dislike gossip. Two Vale cousins who depended upon Selina's invitations. A severe widow known for judging women more harshly than men. Viscount Rookham stood near the window with one hand resting on the back of a chair, his signet displayed as calmly as a crest above a gate. For the first time, the sight of it did not make Cressida shrink. It made her remember the shape of evidence. Selina rose. "Cressida, how relieved we are that you have come to your senses." Her gaze slid over Duchess Agatha, Benedict, Tilly, Mrs. Penn, and Mr. Alden as they entered behind her. "Though I see you have brought a procession." "Witnesses," Duchess Agatha said. "Such useful creatures when a room has practiced forgetting." A ripple moved through the guests. Benedict did not speak. Cressida felt his silence behind her, not empty, not doubtful this time, but held in deliberate reserve. Selina's smile tightened. "We are here to settle an unfortunate misunderstanding. Nothing more." "Then it should not take long," Cressida said. Several faces turned toward her. She heard the small surprise in the room. Lady Cressida Vale was not expected to begin. She was expected to be introduced, pitied, corrected, and perhaps rescued. She stepped farther into the room. The carpet muffled her movement, but every eye followed. Tilly remained at her side. Mrs. Penn took a position near the door, steady as a schoolroom rule. Mr. Alden held the dispatch case with both hands and looked as though he would rather face a chancery clerk than a gathering of ladies, but he did not retreat. Rookham smiled. "Lady Cressida, no one here is your enemy." "Then I am fortunate," she replied, "to have brought so much evidence for friends." Lady Bellwether's fan stopped. Selina gave a soft sigh. "This is exactly the sort of performance I feared. My friends, you must forgive her. She has been under great strain, and certain persons have encouraged a fanciful interpretation of family discipline." "Family discipline," Benedict repeated. The words were quiet. They crossed the room like a blade laid flat. Selina turned to him with exquisite regret. "Your Grace, I had hoped to spare you embarrassment." Lady Cressida's attachment to your attention has become confused. Children imitate what they hear from those they love. A glove becomes a tragedy. A household disagreement becomes a tale of persecution. You understand how easily sympathy may be misdirected. I understand a great deal more than I did yesterday, Benedict said. Rookham moved then, smooth and paternal. Let us not sharpen matters unnecessarily. Lady Cressida, I have said before, and I say again before these friends of your family, that I am prepared to overlook this entire disturbance. Your reputation need not suffer further. I will marry you despite the whispers. The severe widow nodded as if this were generosity on a scale fit for scripture. One of the cousins murmured approval. Tilly's hand tightened in Cressida's. Cressida did not look down. If she did, she might kneel and gather the child into her arms, and that would let the room mistake tenderness for weakness. Despite the whispers, Cressida said, "How noble." Rookham inclined his head. "You may not feel gratitude now. You mistake me. I feel a great deal." She turned toward the tea table. A silver tray stood beside the service, empty except for folded napkins and a dish of lemon slices. It was the sort of tray upon which visiting cards were placed, or cups, or notes meant to pass from hand to hand. Cressida walked to it. No one stopped her. That was the power of doing something slowly in a room trained to wait for explanations. She placed the old glove on the center of the tray. Ivory against silver. Stain against shine. Small, silent, unmistakable. The room changed. It did not erupt. It drew breath inward. Lady Bellwether leaned forward. Mrs. Harcourt's eyes sharpened with hunger. The severe widow frowned as though the object had behaved improperly. Selina went very still. Rookham laughed once, lightly. "Is that the famous glove? How theatrical." Cressida looked at him. "It is not famous, my lord. It was hidden. A torn glove proves nothing except carelessness. Then you should feel no concern." His smile remained, but the edges hardened. "I feel concern only for your dignity. My dignity is why I brought it." Benedict shifted behind her, no more than half a step. Not forward enough to claim the moment. Near enough that the room remembered his presence. Cressida did not turn to him. She did not need to. She could feel the steadiness there, but the voice had to be hers. Lady Selina wished to settle this misunderstanding before trusted friends, Cressida said. "I agree. Let it be settled. I was told I imagined too much. My sister was told she spoke too much. His Grace was sent a forged letter suggesting I staged a child's fear to obtain protection. Lord Rookham has now offered to marry me despite the whispers those same falsehoods produced." Selina's voice cut in softly. "Cressida, you are making yourself ridiculous." "No," Duchess Agatha said. "She is making herself clear. The two are often confused by those who prefer women indistinct." A murmur rose, then died. Cressida touched the edge of the tray. Her fingers did not tremble now. This glove was marked before any gossip existed. Before any letter was sent. Before I asked anyone for help. Rookham's gaze dropped to the stain, then lifted too quickly. Cressida saw it. So did Benedict. So, perhaps, did half the room, though they might not yet understand what they had seen. "You are accusing me of damaging a lady's glove?" Rookham asked. "No," Cressida said. "I am asking you to explain it." Selina stepped forward. "Enough." Cressida did not look at her. She lifted the glove from the tray and unfolded the wrist with care. The violet mark appeared, faint yet shaped, a ghost of pressure in the leather. She placed it back down, open now, visible to every guest. "Viscount Rookham," she said, and the room went utterly silent. "Would you care to explain why your signet is on my glove?" For one perfect second, no one moved. The question remained in the air with the old glove below it, open upon silver, the faint oval mark exposed to every eye that had come to enjoy Cressida's humiliation. Viscount Rookham looked at the glove as if courtesy alone might erase it. Then he laughed. "My dear Lady Cressida, I fear Wycliffe's attention has given your imagination a taste for drama. A signet on a glove? What next?" Shall my crest appear in the tea leaves? Lady Bellwether gave a nervous flutter of her fan, but no one laughed with him. Cressida did not lower her gaze. If the mark is absurd, you will not object to its being compared. Compared with what? Rookham asked. Benedict spoke for the first time. With this? Mr. Alden stepped forward and opened the dispatch case. His hands were not steady, but his voice was clear enough. A written statement from Mr. Pelham of Bond Street, jeweller, confirming the form of Viscount Rookham's signet. His Grace also has a pencil impression taken from the replacement ring made 2 years ago. Benedict took the folded paper and placed it beside the glove, but he did not cover Cressida's evidence with his own. That distinction settled over her like a hand at her back, present but not pushing. Mrs. Harcourt leaned forward despite herself. May one see? Duchess Agatha answered before Selina could intervene. Of course. Evidence brought before witnesses should not be hidden from them. The paper passed from hand to hand. Lady Bellwether held it near the tray and grew pale with interest. The severe widow took longer. Her mouth flattened. The oval is quite distinctive. Rookham's smile tightened. A jeweller's sketch proves only that I own a ring. It does not prove the ring touched the lady's glove. No, Cressida said. It proves only that the mark has a source. Other matters prove where. Lady Selina moved sharply. Enough of this vulgar display. Cressida, you will apologize to Lord Rookham at once. No, the word was not loud. It ended something. Selina stared as if the person before her had become a stranger in the space of a breath. Cressida felt Tilly's hand brush her skirt, not clutching now, only reminding her she was not alone. Mr. Alden drew out a second paper. There is also the matter of the letter sent to His Grace at the Opera. The paper corresponds with a stock kept in Lady Selina's escritoire, according to a sworn note from a member of the Vale household. The ink corresponds with that purchased by Lord Rookham's man from a stationer near St. James's Street. Servants, Rookham said, his voice losing warmth. Now we are to govern reputations by servants. A quiet voice came from the doorway. Sometimes servants are the only ones in the room expected to remember what their betters do. Everyone turned. Jenny, the young maid from Vale House, stood there in her plain dress and white apron, shaking so visibly that Mrs. Penn stepped nearer to her at once. Behind Jenny stood Hargreaves, expressionless and protective in the manner of an old servant who understood household warfare better than most gentlemen. Lady Selina went white with fury. Jenny, leave this room. Duchess Agatha lifted one hand. The girl remains. Selina's eyes flashed. This is my house. And this is my circle, Duchess Agatha said. You invited witnesses. Endure them. Jenny swallowed hard. I saw Lord Rookham take Lady Cressida's wrist in the blue room. More than once. I saw my lady come out with her glove torn at the stitching. Lady Matilda cried after, and Lady Selina said if she spoke of it, she would be sent away. Tilly made a small sound, but she did not hide. Cressida turned enough to see her sister's face, pale and brave, and something inside her that had been braced for years softened without collapsing. Rookham stepped forward. Benedict moved only half a pace, but the movement stopped him. Take care, Benedict said. The words were quiet. The room heard the warning inside them. Rookham's nostrils flared. This is outrageous. A maid repeats a child's fantasy, and a duke lends it weight because he fancies himself a rescuer. I am not the one who spoke first, Benedict said. Lady Cressida is. Cressida looked at him then. Only once. Gratitude would come later, if it came at all. For now there was truth. Mr. Alden placed a household account upon the table. There is also a financial concern. Lady Selina received funds tied to Ardenwick timber advances and discussions of Lady Cressida's marriage settlement. Lord Rookham's name appears in connection with both. Selina's composure cracked at last. Those accounts are private. So was my wrist, Cressida said. The silence that followed was complete. No music covered it. No laughter softened it. No one looked away in time to pretend they had not heard. Cressida took the glove from the tray and held it up, not high, only enough that its damaged wrist could be seen. I was told I was anxious. I was told I misunderstood. I was told my sister was fanciful, that my silence was consent, that gratitude should be enough if a gentleman agreed to marry me after making me afraid. I refuse that marriage. I refuse to be used to pay debts I did not make. I refuse to let my sister be threatened into silence because adults prefer comfort to truth. Lady Bellwether lowered her fan. Mrs. Harcourt looked from Selina to Rookham with the hungry alertness of gossip transforming into judgment. The severe widow, who had arrived prepared to condemn Cressida, set the jeweller's statement down with visible care. Lady Cressida, she said, did you seek his Grace's protection by deceit? Cressida's chin lifted. No. I tried not to seek it at all. Tilly stepped forward before anyone could stop her. I asked him because no one else listened. Her voice trembled, but it carried. Cressida didn't tell me to. She told me to hush because she was scared for me. Benedict's face changed, not in softness only, but in pain accepted without excuse. He bowed his head to the child. And I should have listened better sooner. That admission, spoken before the room, altered him in their eyes. Dukes were expected to defend themselves. Benedict chose accountability instead. Duchess Agatha rose. Her violet silk rustled like a standard being lifted. Lady Selina, you will not be received in my drawing rooms. Nor will I recognize any chaperonage authority you claim over these young ladies while Mr. Alden reviews the household arrangements with the proper trustees. Lord Rookham, I recommend you leave London before London has finished discussing you. Rookham's face darkened. You cannot ruin a man over a glove. Benedict stepped beside Cressida, not before her. No. Your own conduct has done that. House of Wycliffe recognizes Lady Cressida Vale's truth and will stand witness to it. The words did not sound like rescue. They sounded like a record being entered where society itself could hear. Rookham looked around the room for allies and found only people studying their gloves, their fans, their teacups, anything but him. Men survived scandals when women were isolated. He had lost that advantage. Lady Bellwether rose first. Duchess Agatha, my carriage is at your disposal, should Lady Cressida require another witness. Mrs. Harcourt followed quickly. And I shall be glad to contradict any inaccurate version of events. It was not courage pure and shining. It was society adjusting to the strongest truth in the room. Cressida accepted it anyway. Selina stood very straight, but everything victorious had gone out of her. You have destroyed your family, she said to Cressida. No, Cressida replied. I have found what remains of it. She looked down at Tilly, and the child came into her arms in front of everyone. No one corrected them. No one dared. Mr. Alden gathered the papers. Jenny was escorted out by Mrs. Penn, who murmured something that made the young maid cry quietly with relief. Rookham left without farewell. Lady Selina remained until Duchess Agatha turned her back on her, which in that room was worse than any shouted sentence. One by one, the guests departed, carrying the truth with them like flame hidden in folded paper. When the drawing room emptied at last, Cressida stood beside the silver tray where the glove still lay. Benedict did not touch her. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not turn the moment into his own triumph. After all the doors had closed, he said only, "Where would you feel safe tonight?" Cressida looked at the old glove, then at Tilly's tear-streaked face, then at the man who had finally learned that protection began by asking. "Not here," she said. "Then not here," Benedict answered. And for the first time, leaving Vale House did not feel like escape. It felt like a verdict. 3 weeks later, Harrowmere Park opened before Cressida like a place that had never learned to threaten anyone. The carriage rolled through a long avenue of beeches, their new leaves bright against an April sky washed clean by rain, and Tilly pressed both hands to the window with the wonder of a child who had expected every great house to hide a blue room somewhere inside it. "Are the doors heavy?" she asked. Duchess Agatha, seated opposite them with a travelling rug over her knees, looked up from her letter. "Respectably heavy, my dear, but none of them lock from the outside unless the silver is being stored." Tilly considered this. That seems sensible. Cressida smiled before she could stop herself. She smiled more often now, though sometimes the expression still startled her. Since leaving Vale House, she had lived under Duchess Agatha's protection while Mr. Alden and the trustees untangled the household arrangements with cautious determination. Lady Selina had been removed from any authority over Tilly's residence and education. The new Earl of Arden, embarrassed by the accounts and terrified of Wycliffe displeasure, had agreed to every recommendation placed before him. Viscount Rookham had departed London suddenly for the Continent, though not before several families withdrew invitations and 2 creditors discovered renewed courage. Lady Selina remained in town, but the rooms she had once ruled had learned to be unavailable when she called. Justice, Cressida had found, did not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it came as unanswered cards, sealed accounts, signed papers, and a child sleeping through the night. The carriage stopped before Harrowmere Park, a wide stone house set above lawns descending toward a silver line of water. It was grand, certainly, but not gaudy. Its windows looked outward, not down. Benedict stood on the steps in dark morning clothes, hat in hand, with the restraint of a man welcoming guests he longed to call family and would not presume to claim. Cressida descended with Duchess Agatha's assistance before he could offer his hand. He noticed. He accepted it. That was one of the reasons her heart had slowly become less afraid of him. "Lady Cressida," he said. "Lady Matilda. Welcome to Harrowmere." Tilly looked past him at the open door. "May I see the nursery?" Benedict's mouth softened. "You may see every room you wish, and none you do not." The answer satisfied her so completely that she took Duchess Agatha's hand and went inside with almost ordinary excitement. Cressida remained on the steps with Benedict as the carriage was unloaded behind them. For several seconds, neither spoke. Since the drawing room at Vale House, he had not pressed her. He had written twice, each letter brief, respectful, and careful not to turn gratitude into debt. He had visited only when Duchess Agatha invited him. He had asked after Tilly before asking after Cressida, not because Cressida mattered less, but because he understood what her heart guarded first. "You look relieved," he said. "I am. And tired. Also true. And suspicious of good weather." She glanced at the pale sky. "Weather changes without warning. So do lives." "Yes." He looked toward the open door, where Tilly's laughter rose from the hall, bright and surprised. "Some changes are late in asking permission." Cressida turned to him. "Is that an apology? A confession?" His eyes met hers. "I would like to ask your permission for something later, if you are willing to walk in the chapel garden after tea." Her breath caught, not because she did not understand, but because she did. Once, the thought of a proposal would have felt like an arrangement closing around her. Now it felt like a door standing open and waiting for her decision. "After tea," she said. The chapel garden lay behind the east wing, enclosed by old yew hedges and warmed by the late afternoon sun. A small stone chapel stood at its edge, built for a duke's ancestors and softened by time into peace. Cressida walked beside Benedict along the gravel path with no chaperone in hearing distance, though Duchess Agatha sat in plain view near the rose arbor with her embroidery, preserving propriety with the air of a woman who considered romance tolerable when supervised from 20 yards away. Tilly was in the orchard with a maid, attempting to determine whether Harrowmere apples tasted better than London apples before any apples existed. "She laughed today," Cressida said. "At breakfast, when the footman brought marmalade and she thought he said mermaid. I heard. She did not look to see whether anyone would punish her for it." Benedict stopped near the chapel gate. "That may be the best thing this house has ever accomplished." Cressida looked at him then, really looked, without the screen of fear, scandal, or evidence between them. He seemed less cold here, though perhaps he had never been cold in the way people said. Perhaps he had been a man so disciplined by duty that tenderness had needed permission to show itself. "What did you wish to ask?" she said. He did not reach for her hand. He had learned that waiting was sometimes the most intimate courtesy. "I love you," he said. No flourish. No audience. No music. Just the truth, placed plainly where she could refuse it. "I love the woman who stood in a room full of lies and made truth stand upright. I love the woman who protected a child even when fear had trained her to be silent. I love the woman who corrected my arrogance without cruelty, though I deserved less mercy than she gave." Cressida's eyes stung. "You do not want the woman London pitied. No, or the woman scandal made convenient." Never. Or the woman Tilly chose for you. His expression warmed. I shall always be grateful to Tilly's judgment, but I am asking for myself. She looked down at her hands. They were bare. She had stopped wearing gloves in private, though she still wore them in public like any lady. The old mark had faded from her skin. Some mornings she searched for it before remembering she did not need proof of what had happened to know it had been real. When you look at me, she asked softly, do you still see the glove? Benedict's answer came without hesitation. I see the hand that placed it before the world. A tear slipped down before she could prevent it. He saw and did not move to wipe it away, because the tear belonged to her unless she offered it. That, too, was love. Then ask me, she said. Benedict took one breath. Lady Cressida Vale, will you marry me, not for protection, not for scandal, not for gratitude, but because you choose to share a life with me? She held out her hand. Yes. Only then did he take it. His fingers closed around hers with careful warmth, and Cressida felt no trap in the touch. Only steadiness. From the path, Tilly appeared at a run, then stopped so abruptly that the maid nearly collided with her. She had a small parcel wrapped in tissue. Am I too early? She called. Duchess Agatha sighed. In feeling, perhaps. In timing, certainly. Benedict laughed, and the sound changed his face entirely. Tilly rushed forward anyway and thrust the parcel at Cressida. Inside lay a new pair of ivory gloves, soft and perfect, with tiny pearl buttons at the wrist. They don't have any marks, Tilly said. I checked. Cressida drew the child close with her free arm. They are beautiful. You don't have to wear them now. No, Cressida said, looking at Benedict. Not now. Months later, after a quiet wedding in the chapel and a season in which London discovered that the new Duchess of Wycliffe was neither fragile nor easily managed, Cressida established a small fund for girls, governesses, and women trapped inside respectable houses with nowhere proper to go. Duchess Agatha called it practical charity. Benedict called it justice with better stationery. Tilly called it the place where doors opened. In Cressida's private sitting room at Harrowmere, inside a cedar box lined with blue silk, the old bruised glove rested beside the child's first drawing of the blue room. It was no longer hidden. It was no longer worn. Sometimes Cressida opened the box, not to return to pain, but to remember the day silence ended. Then she would close it, take Benedict's hand without gloves, and walk into the bright, ordinary rooms of the life she had chosen.